A lot of marketers might think that staying in the digital space is safer. We just talked about the challenges of brand safety and click fraud, but even so, the digital environment is a lower barrier to entry when you compare it to a channel like television.
Hello, and welcome to The Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, the CEO of Marketing Architects, and Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines. We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Today, we're talking about media quality. Why are consumers and advertisers alike concerned about media quality in 2024? How has the emergence of AI accelerated this concern? And what should your brand do about it? This episode was inspired by two recent articles from Work, one of our favorite marketing pubs. The first I'd like to review is by Paul Stringer, and it's called Why Media Quality Will Take Center Stage in 2024. The article starts with some positive news. Work Media predicts global ad spend will double its growth this year, rising to over $1 trillion for the first time. The big winners are tech companies, 5 of which, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and ByteDance, account for more than half of the total money spent on advertising. And key to their growth has been AI, which these tech companies have incorporated into their advertising solutions. But this growth comes with worries. Without guardrails, there are concerns that the open web will see a huge increase in AI-generated misinformation this year, and brands might become wary of advertising online due to brand safety and ad fraud concerns. Work predicts that channels like linear TV, which delivers high-impact advertising to a mass audience in a brand-safe way, will be uniquely placed to deliver value for marketers. Stringer even mentions the signaling strength of TV. It is the most likely channel to impact a consumer's perception of a brand positively. But signal strength is just one part of this media quality discussion. Many marketers have pinned their hopes on attention measurement, but as we discussed a few episodes ago, this still has a long way to go and it's not a silver bullet. Stringer wrapped things up by giving his recommendation of a way forward. Marketers need more complementary measures to give us a more rounded view of media quality. So that's Article 1. I wanted to briefly touch on another Work article. This is from Alex Bronsell and Celeste Hang, and it's called Focus on Cheap Reach is Drawing Brands Towards MFA Inventory. So first, let's define MFA. MFA stands for Made for Advertising. MFA sites are web pages filled with excessive ads, which creates a visually overwhelming experience, yet they're appealing to ad buying algorithms due to their visibility and low cost. While not technically classified as fraud, MSAs exist in this gray area. They attract real users, but often through inorganic means, resulting in engagements of little actual value, a practice that continues despite being disfavored by advertisers and publishers alike. So that's MFA. Now back to the article. The authors summarize data from the latest ANA report on programmatic media. Here are a couple of headlines. 14% of all programmatic spend with private marketplaces resulted in ads running on MFA websites. CPMs paid on those sites were on average 25% lower than those on non-MFA sites. So brands, they're trying to bring these costs down, but in the process, they're running ads on low-quality inventory. The study concludes with a scary finding. Only 36 cents of every dollar entering a DSP effectively reaches the consumer. So those are two articles, lots of information, but let's start with the first one. Ange, how concerned do you think marketers should be about the state of digital advertising this year?
I mean, I think if I'm a brand, it does feel concerning. It feels sort of irresponsible to not be concerned, just not knowing, what this is going to potentially do to the web environment. And I think the concern isn't just about waste, it's the potential to damage your brand integrity or the effectiveness of your advertising efforts as the digital landscape becomes more complex. The lack of correlation between ad spend and quality on the open web just sort of threatens the trust and the value that marketers can place in these digital channels. And I think we have to think about how do we demand greater transparency from the space so that we can leverage that data more effectively, looking at log level data potentially, and just pushing for that quality over quantity in ad placements. I mean, we are believers in cost efficiency, so I don't want to go too far down that road, but I do think that brand safety is something to be concerned about, ultimately with the intent to just drive ROI in our digital advertising efforts.
Is brand safety a little bit blown out of proportion, though? Just because I know it's always a hot topic. You see it in the headlines, you hear about it at the conferences. It's like we've made brand safety into some kind of boogeyman. Okay, so here's my probably bad example, but I'm going to give it anyway. So I'm riding on a bus, right? I'm cruising down the road. I look above the person in front of me and there's a T-Mobile ad. And it's really clever. It's funny. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this T-Mobile. Maybe I should be switching my brand. Then all of a sudden, the bus takes a really sharp turn into a really seedy part of town, right? Where like Ange lives. And we're sitting there going, okay, is this like, I don't like T-Mobile anymore. I'm on this bus and it's a bus ad and now we're driving in a bad part of town and darn it, T-Mobile, I don't like you anymore. Like, are we blowing it out of proportion a bit? Because we are so conditioned to see ads everywhere, especially in the digital realm.
Rob, I know you pretty well. I mean, I sort of have a grasp on your morals and how you like to think about life. And you really think that if you owned a brand and your brand was showing up on everything from like adult content sites to fake news, misinformation, even like extremist hate speech, you don't care?
But are we talking about a small instance of when we talk about brand safety? Because are we talking about brand safety in terms of, I'm not sure if that's the right channel for me, or this made for advertising sites that we're talking about? Like, because I thought this was kind of interesting because this is my opinion. I'm an expert in my opinion. I get emotional about my opinions, but I know you guys are smart and you like facts. So I'm like, okay, I looked this up, and according to the World Federation of Advertisers, only 8% of consumers hold brands responsible for the environment in which their ads are shown. So are we overblowing the overall? Not that I'm not disagreeing with you. Obviously, you don't want to be having your ads show up on things that you don't endorse. But are we blowing the topic out of proportion? Is it like that much of an issue?
I think that we operate in television, right? So, and this does come up even in television, even though, like, to the point of the article and the author kind of saying, like, this is a space where we don't have to worry about this as much. When we think about like content alignment, we have a lot of clients that are like, I don't know if I want to be here. I don't want to be there. Polarizing individuals on unnamed networks, things like that. And that's a choice, of course, they have to make. I would say that we have a lot of data to support the fact that there is a ton of lost sales potential in some of those situations. But I feel like that's for that brand to manage and to mindfully turn down, ROI opportunity or growth opportunity. Is it blown out of proportion? I don't know. That's a hard question.
There's a difference between like media quality and brand safety. Like they overlap, but I think part of the problem here is like if you're showing up on a made for advertising website, there could be like gross stuff on that website, but a lot of it is just a page just overwhelmed with ads. So it's more of an issue of I'm not getting my money's worth. Like 14% of all my programmatic spend is running on MFA websites. It's just not effective. Like you're just wasting a ton of money, and I don't know why that should happen. So I think like the debate kind of differs if you're talking about media quality, brand safety, ad fraud. I think it's crazy that MFA is not considered ad fraud. Like it exists in some gray area. And we know the stats about just display ads in general, even if it's clear on a great website, like if it's not at the way top, you're not even going to see it. So then you add this in. It doesn't seem necessary that advertisers should have to lose so much when they're buying inventory. And also, it's interesting that this is occurring more and more as they're trying to bring costs down. And it just seems like it shouldn't have to be this way. And I don't think enough marketers are aware of it if this is still happening so frequently. I mean, that's a lot of lost spend and lost performance. So like regardless of the morality side of it or how your brand's going to be perceived, I don't want to be losing 14% of my marketing dollars on just media that's not quality. I think that's why we love TV, because we feel like TV has more value, I think, than most other marketing channels.
Elena, just so I have it clear in my head, when we talk about MFA, that's like if I'm on CNN.com and on the bottom of there, it looks like a news article on like, hey, Jay-Z's, check out his new $500,000 Bentley or whatever. And you click on it and it's a news article, but it's clearly not CNN's. And it's just filled with ads. Would that be an example?
Right. Like it's a website that's not real content. I've also heard on a work podcast about this, that these MFA websites, they've also found ways to like spoof DSPs. Like there's a lot of shady stuff happening. They're trying to get your ad dollars. Like I just think it's fraud. And I don't hear about it that often either.
Right. I think we're going to hear more and more about it.
Well, Ange, you teed this up a little bit with your reply, but I think the reach versus cost debate is very interesting for us to cover because we talk a lot about the value of efficient reach, but we say things like everything always works at zero, and we've talked about how important bringing your cost down is to performance. But these MFA sites, that's a whole different kind of story.
You might think that by tracking engagements, so clicks, right, as an example, you can avoid being overly excited about efficient reach. But I think the challenge is, even if marketers are tracking those clicks through various analytic tools on an MFA site, they're often also associated with low quality traffic, right? Including non-human traffic or bots, which can result in that click fraud. And that inflates advertising metrics, giving the illusion that there is performance when in the reality, the clicks aren't from genuine interested consumers. So it is a little different than when we think of kind of low quality in television and that push for efficiency. That's the beauty of working in an offline channel. Now, CTV is a little more online, of course, but this is a bit of a different case, I would say, and agree.
Well, speaking of television, I know we all probably loved that first article, gave such a great shout out to TV that didn't even come from us, came from an unbiased third party. But we hear this stuff about TV, we think, well, more marketers should be investing in specifically linear TV because of its media qualities. But what are these barriers? Like, there are barriers to TV that just aren't found in digital that marketers have to consider.
To me, this is really a valuation of risk. A lot of marketers might think that staying in the digital space is safer. We just talked about the challenges of brand safety and click fraud, but even so, the digital environment is a lower barrier to entry when you compare it to a channel like television. And many marketers might be turned off by TV's cost of entry. We don't often talk about TV pricing publicly with our friends and our family, unless it's something like the Super Bowl, in which case we're telling the world that it costs $7 million to air a 30-second spot. And so the assumption might be that TV is, no question, a 20 plus CPM game, plus the cost of creating a spot that you deem worthy of broadcasting to the nation. I think many assume that that alone could be upwards of $1 million venture. And it can be, but it doesn't have to be. And I think marketers worry about the measurements of television. Is it a channel that I have to invest millions into in order to see any effect? Or do I need to be on air for a year in order to see that effect? And that's just very antiquated thinking. It's the reason actually that we developed the model that we work under, which we call all-inclusive TV, which allows brands to enter the TV space with only investment into media, and then we deploy our capital to all the other necessary investments, be that strategy or creative pre-testing or production, measurement tech, etc. But even beyond what we offer, I think it's important for marketers to know that a more modern, savvy approach to linear breaks down these age-old biases on the barriers to entry and allows for brands to gain massive reach and growth potential at a fraction of what they assume TV will cost. If you're coming to TV to only do Super Bowl-like events, that's a really poor use of TV. There's a much more effective way.
Ange, do you see much of a difference in the brand safety conversation as it relates to television and streaming? Like, are they similar? Are they different? Are there other considerations that we need to keep in mind as we think about streaming versus linear?
When you think about television, it's a regulated space. And when you think about CTV, it is much more digital-like. There's a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of smaller players. And so you want to have kind of that lens of mindfulness of digital when you think about CTV. Brand safety in the linear space, like we had mentioned before, takes on a little bit of a different angle. We don't have to worry as much about bots and click fraud and things like that. It could potentially show up in the CTV space as well.
Well, as much as we love TV, marketers definitely cannot avoid digital altogether. And Paul Stringer, in that first article we mentioned, he recommended that marketers use complementary measures to estimate media quality. So, Ange, what might some of those be?
I found it interesting in that article. He talked about quote unquote right reach versus just reach in general, which has really helped advertisers ensure that their advertising campaigns are reaching the intended audience in the right context with effective engagement. And so this metric, or the idea of it, just sort of aims to go beyond traditional reach metrics. We can incorporate various factors that contribute to overall quality and effectiveness. They might be things like the relevance of the content environment to the brand's message. It could be the level of audience engagement. It could be the likelihood of the audience to take desired actions and the safety of the brand's image in the context of the ad placement. So there are various attributes or variables that you can look at to determine what is that right reach. And I think those might be a bit specific to each brand, but it does give a little more quantification versus just reach in general.
Well, Rob, I wanted to talk about one of your favorite topics, which is AI, because that was a big feature of the articles today. How worried are you about AI produced content really like changing our internet experience?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Of course you're not.
Shocker. Shocker.
I truly feel that AI is actually going to make digital ads better. I think it's going to make it make them more compelling, more dynamic, more personalized. Even some of the testing that we've been doing on the Misfits and Machines side of the business, I'm amazed at how well AI can interpret and build upon brand standards. So I think it's actually going to be a superpower as it relates to managing brands in both digital and in television.
Are you worried at all about like deepfakes, stuff with the election? Like, do you think they're just going to figure that out? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's going to always exist. I think it's always existed since, people were able to cut and paste photographs together onto a sheet and make a print. I mean, then Photoshop came out and we've had issues with that. The technology is going to continue to get better, and that's not going to change the fraudsters out there from utilizing it to do bad things. But is that going to keep everyone up at night? I just think we've had this issue. We're going to continue to have that issue.
All right. So obviously you're a marketer who's excited about AI, and a lot of other marketers are too. How do you think that marketers should think about balancing that like excitement for AI while they're still maintaining media quality?
I personally, and I think it's good to have, someone like Ange on this as well, because being that I am so aggressive and more kind of bullish on AI and also not as concerned about brand safety, I look at it more of a what's the risk in experimenting, especially in digital. Make small bets, make a lot of them, see what happens. But I also recognize that there's a greater brand safety issue in here. So I'm actually curious to get Ange's answer on the same question.
Can you please offer actual advice to our listeners? We're just living over here in like rainbows and roses. Yes.
Solution.
It's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think we should probably be thinking balance, right, between leveraging AI and maintaining media quality. I think the key is to harness the power of AI, to your point, Rob. Let's enhance creativity. Let's look at personalization. Let's look at efficiency, while also thinking about instituting measures to safeguard media quality and brand integrity. And I think this is an area that we should probably invest in learning more about, because none of us really know, right? Like what's to come. And so staying on top of that, being informed about the capabilities and the limitations of AI technology, understanding how AI can be used responsibly in content creation and ad placement, I think will help us prevent misinformation and just maintain that authenticity of that brand messaging. And then I think back to Paul's recommendation, the author of one of the articles, this is just another reason why marketers need to reconsider channels like TV that they had maybe avoided in the past. It seems that the digital environment just sort of keeps shelling out reasons to look for other channels in general, but top of funnel, of course, kind of comes to the top in this case.
Well, this was meant to be a pretty serious episode, so I was going to lighten it up with a kind of fun closer, but Rob's made this significantly less serious, but we're still going to end with a fun segment.
I've been serious the whole time. You guys just don't take me serious.
Yeah. All right, so here's my final question. I want to know your most unusual experience with an online ad. And I'm making this pretty broad. It could be a place an ad popped up, bad timing of an ad, like a certain product, anything.
My answer is pretty much anytime I go onto Amazon. And the reason for that is my son is now off to college, so I live with two wonderful ladies. And so Amazon thinks I'm a middle-aged woman or a 18-year-old girl. And so I'm pretty much uncomfortable every time I go on and see what is served up to me in their ad engine.
I had a hard time coming up with one. And then I feel like the podcast gods presented one to me that I actually ended up screen grabbing. So I go to local news content on care11.com, and I do it several times a day to see what's going on here in Minneapolis. And right at the very top of the screen, I screen grabbed it. There's a beautiful woman. She's got a headset on, like she's working at a call center, something like that, smiling, looking right into the camera. The text on the ad just says, chat with an expert online now. A technician will answer your question in minutes. Chat now. That's it. Like, no logo.
Yeah.
I have no idea what we're talking about. Just a technician, just in case. A technician I'm not sure. So,
I can just see that in my head, like the stock image of the woman with like the call center headset.
Yes.
Just smiling. Yeah.
You're like, somebody paid to put that in front of my eyes. I don't know what it's for.
Yeah. This is fun. We're all kind of choosing different ones. So mine I'm actually stealing from my husband, Sam. I was asking him this question and he said that when he was going to propose, he kept getting retargeted with just these diamond engagement ring ads, even after he had bought it. So he was nervous every time he was on his computer that like I was going to see those ads.
Totally. Yeah, that's a valid concern.
All right. That's a great place for us to wrap up. Thanks, everybody. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Ayana Klaphocky for producing the show and Taylor De Los Reyes for editing. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find the show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. It's built for marketers seeking research-first analysis of the latest trends. You can go to marketingarchitects.com/newsletter to subscribe. Now go forth and build great marketing.
Nobody likes fraud. We can all agree on that.
Well, apparently Rob does. I don't know. Rob for president.